Would you look who it is again?
Hello.
Hi again, Elena. And hello to everyone out there. For anyone listening to us live on LinkedIn, sorry we're a little late. Elena and I were chatting about how this is my first LinkedIn live stream with Workable, and something went wrong, but it looks like we are live now. So hello. Great
Happy
to have
to
you.
be the guinea pig for this awesome experience.
Thank you. There is no one better to be here for us than someone who is such an expert in video and connecting with people through video and troubleshooting video. So if you don't mind, Elena,
and giving grace to people when, we're not live quite yet. It's okay.
Truly. Elena, you are sent from above to be here today. All right, so let's go ahead. I'll jump into this so we can save ourselves some time and really get into things with the time we have left. To everyone listening, whether you're listening with us right now or you're listening on demand on your favorite podcast platform, I'm super excited to talk about how to attract, engage, retain talent with the wonderful Elena today. And she'll tell us a little bit about herself in just a minute. And this is Better Hiring, a podcast by Workable. Why I've started this podcast, I'm Carolyn, a marketing manager at Workable, and the absolute favorite part of my job, or as Elena says, what makes her heart sing, is getting to learn from the leaders out there who are constantly challenging the status quo and moving the hiring industry forward or the HR industry forward. Basically everyone out there who's bridging the gap between talent and opportunity. And as we all know, trying to find a job is a very stressful process, and it is not any easier for the recruiters or the HR managers out there who are trying to find great talent. But I think we're really lucky to live in a time where so many people like you, Elena, are doing really amazing things to make hiring better. So again, that is enough about me. Elena, let's hear a little bit about yourself, Skillscout, and what's going on in your world.
Yeah. So I'm the proud co-founder and servant leader of Skillscout Films. And what makes my heart sing about the work that I do is ways that I get to hold space for people to share their most authentic selves, especially when it comes to the purpose and the meaning of their work. This is what I get to do, all day, every day. And it really has been the biggest honor. And that really transcends, right? Holding space for someone, that really transcends the medium by which we do that, which just so happens to be film. And at Skillscout Films, we exist to capture the humanity of work through stories that matter. Everyone has a story of work and why it's meaningful. And so we really get to highlight that primarily through the lens of a film camera. And so whether that's bringing jobs to life, company culture, whether that's bringing, individual employee stories to life that help showcase a certain value, any and all workplace communication from the candidate experience to the, really throughout the entire employee life cycle, where you are looking to create meaningful connection, looking to create a level of emotion or a call to action around something. That's really where we see video being a great fit. And I would say that the other kind of big takeaway for folks that either are still considering this, they're on the teetering edge of this, maybe they're full on in, is that any and all companies have unique stories to tell because of the people who are in them. And so large and small, transcendent of industry, our clients are proof that you can use this and do that pretty successfully. And so you could be a manufacturing job shop of 5 people, all the way to, the McDonald's, Wendy's, American Airlines, Thermo Fisher, some of the biggest brands in the business. Video is still very much for you because you all have really unique stories to tell.
Yep. I love that. And I love the way you say it makes your heart sing. And what we were talking about before is that, finding the things that make your heart sing these days are really important. And that kind of brings us into thinking about the way that the past year has been. And I know this conversation isn't just about, connecting with people through the pandemic, because video For years, we've seen this is what works. But I found that, my days are spent talking to my team members. We've had a really crazy year of triumphs and incredible experiences and hard experiences, but experiences where we became closer as a team. I have really good memories. And there is a connection between employer and employee, and it's where we spend all of our time. And there's value there. So as a marketer, I know the value of video, but I am a big fan of using this medium in telling brand stories. So I guess from there, what would be cool to hear from you is if you could help us visualize what this looks like and what these videos look like, where they are, how companies use them.
Yeah, that's a big loaded question. I mean, I think the first one is thinking about that media is a literacy of the 21st century. It's how we learn. We are visual learners. And that's from a biological standpoint. There really is an art and a very much a real science to why video works. We retain 65% of what we see and hear versus what we read. 80% of our brains are dedicated to, processing visuals. And so, we combine the trends of things like video being the largest driver of internet traffic to how we, biologically learn and understand things. And you kind of have this perfect storm for why video. And it's interesting, we've been doing this now for well over 7 years. And what we've seen certainly for the trend is before this was maybe kind of a nice to have. And at this point, it's becoming a status quo. It's like, this is kind of what you need to do because this is a YouTube generation. And if you think that, we're going to YouTube to learn how to braid our hair, get tours of the White House and everything else, we are absolutely going to YouTube to learn about jobs, plain and simple. And especially if we think about, what the pandemic has done to really kind of force us now to start to think differently about how we're showcasing jobs, people, environments. It's really had to, flip it into high gear when it comes to the value of video. So, certainly there's a key science to this. And, when it comes to video itself, as I had mentioned, really in any and all workplace communication where one, you are looking to create connection, you are looking to create emotion, certainly is where, or showing, right? Where it becomes very difficult through text or copy, where, for example, showing, hey, this is the environment of our manufacturing facility. This is the environment of being a fleet service member, rain, sleet, shine, or snow. That's typically where you want to start, really eyeing towards video specifically, especially in our space of kind of overall kind of employee experience. In our case, because we're talking about better hiring, typically there are a few funnels you are trying to go after. One is the funnel of, all right, we are just here to create a level of brand awareness and interest. Maybe this is a company that does really great stuff, but no one's ever heard of them before. So we're not even, talking about, the specific job itself as we just need to get our name out there as an employer that can compete with some of these other companies, a few blocks away that everyone knows about. Then there's, certainly a second layer to, okay, being more job specific, right when we're on the job post, which is, all right, I'm a shoe designer. And at this point, I'm looking to understand, do I want to be a shoe designer at Nike or do I want to be a shoe designer at Adidas? And so there's some pretty specific stories of, all right, now that I'm kind of getting an understanding of the culture, what is it really like to work in these specific roles at these specific companies? Then as we get lower, kind of deeper and deeper into the funnel, this is actually where we have a lot more companies now who are bringing their hiring processes to light through video, especially because, as you know, and, for customers at Workable, the processes have changed. And so we have a lot more companies that are creating videos around things like what to expect now in our hiring process. How has it changed? Who are you going to meet? How are you going to meet them? And so there's a lot of this other kind of nitty gritty that I think is helping to bring to light, what some of those stories might be.
Oh, yes. That's an interesting point I wasn't even totally thinking about when thinking about video in the attraction, engagement, and retain process. There's definitely the attraction piece where the way I see it is things that live on a careers page or a social media site and YouTube and the kind of things that people find to understand where they're going to work. But there is the process of engaging with candidates, and what does that look like? And we've even come out with some technology where there's one-way video interviews, which can be a bit weird for people, especially when it's your first time and you're kind of just talking to a computer. But we're putting in abilities for people to record, like welcoming them to the process, and what to expect from the one-way video experience and what to expect after that experience. So there are so many different touch points. And
in fact, the funny thing is the deeper you get into the funnel, the more captive of an audience you have when it comes to candidates, right? Yeah. There's a big difference between the 30-second video that one might see on YouTube to kind of get them into the funnel. And then look, they're already in the funnel, they're applied, and now they're incentivized to say, okay, now I'm going to watch a 5 to 7 minute video that really talks at deep length about this particular role or company or a particular process. And this is certainly the case for many companies where they're dealing with a lot of proprietary processes, think government contracts, where they can't just share publicly, quite frankly, what are some of the things they're working on, the processes. But as you get deeper and deeper into the funnel, some of that can become more available to you. And video can become a way where that can really, really help. And so I would say oftentimes, I think one of the big misconceptions that folks have is we need to get as many eyeballs on this video as we can, when actually, no, the question should be, are we getting the right eyeballs on these videos? It has less to do with the metrics of we've had 50,000 people that is, look, did the right 10 people in our application process who are, kick-ass engineers see this video, and did they understand exactly kind of like what we could offer them? That's the big thing that we need to think about when it comes to kind of our investment and why we do video. It's a yes and, and we need to start considering as we go down the funnel how important some of those connections to be made can be had through video.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And coming back to my marketing hat, something we try to think about as well is there's a lot of talk, and everyone wants to make like the perfect viral marketing piece, but at the end of the day, you want to engage with your community and with your customers and create the content that's going to stick there. So I guess before we get into like the logistics part of how can a company approach actually producing video and using video in their strategy, can you tell me a little bit more about how we would go about creating these videos to attract that specific audience, depending on who we're trying to recruit?
Yeah. So I think that there's a couple of layers here. There's a general like kind of technical production logistics about what should go into these videos, period, regardless of the role. And then it's really thinking about who are we targeting? And those are two different stories, right? Typically, the talent acquisition teams have done enough of the homework to know, okay, we are looking to attract, millennials, we're looking to attract Gen Z, we're looking to attract a particular region of people, right? If we think about, manufacturers who are settling in some rural area of Ohio, right? That's a very different audience than, someone in the city. So I think part of it is, all right, let's just assume you've gotten there and kind of who that specific, kind of audience would be. Then it comes down to what are some of the kinds of ingredients that you kind of want to look for. We really kind of promoted heavily when we started, especially just kind of given where we had come from, really actually into the kind of the job videos itself. Because when we're looking at the job posts, when folks are actually actively looking, this is actually where it becomes a big deal for folks to kind of get some sense of, all right, I already know that I'm looking to become a shoe designer. Now, do I want to become a shoe designer at Adidas or a shoe designer at Nike? And that's where some of the kind of the power can be. And there's typically around kind of, we say around 5 kind of key ingredients, that we are looking for. One is to be specific, right? Which is why we want to think about the roles itself. Who are the folks that they might be working with or that department? The second is going to be show, not tell, which, clearly the medium of video allows to do that. The third I love to say is leaning into the suck, right? And this was a big thing for us, especially given our origins working with young people, was that this isn't just about showing the sunshines and rainbows of a role. We all know that there are sucky parts of all jobs, and we need to be as upfront about that as possible when it comes to this, because we want 2 paths here. We want to give candidates an opportunity to self-screen in or self-screen out. And it's perfectly okay if a candidate is going to self-screen out as a result of this, because we're not here to waste their time. We're also not here to waste ours. I think the fourth, especially depending on kind of how and where we're sharing this, we want to keep it short. I would say typically we say kind of about 90 seconds is typically kind of the sweet spot, especially given kind of social media and, the ways people that are able to peruse. And then really the last is making sure that we're sharing the why, that we are able to kind of help connect people to the overall mission of how this role specifically plays in making the impact that company is making. So, if we can kind of hit off on all of those key ingredients for a specific video, that typically kind of helps to really address a lot of the very immediate questions that candidates would have to either make a decision to continue kind of going down the path of learning more about this role and learning more about this process, or saying, okay, I'm out, on to the next. Perfectly okay.
Yeah. First of all, I love that formula. That's perfect. I'm going to rewatch this and jot that down. But the big thing that really stuck out to me and maybe stuck out to other people is definitely leaning into the suck part, because nobody ever wants to do that. Even when I talk about my own job, I talk about all the great stuff and not so much about, the bad days. So can you give me an example of how clients that you've worked with have kind of done that in the right way?
A big one. I mean, you look at the airlines, they don't shut down. Rain, sleet, shine, or snow, you are out there. And one of the biggest problems that airlines have had, our client American Airlines had, was, look, we could tell fleet service, baggage handlers all day long that we don't shut down and you're going to be out there in whatever degree weather it is. And it wasn't until they got there that they realized oh, this is the truth. And so, really kind of give it to really a lot of the airlines who have done this to say, this is really the reality of the job. And either this is something that you can navigate, you can handle, you're good to weather the storms literally, or not. And that's okay. Another one that is a great story and had really had a lot of success was tower climbers. So these are the ones who are providing cell phone service for all of us. They are going hundreds of feet up in the air. Once again, same thing. Recruiters, no matter how many times they could tell people, look, are you afraid of heights? Are you sure you're not afraid of heights? They'd go up there the first time, realize just how frighteningly, scared they were of heights, and then quit. Same thing again. We had to do a video really showing from a POV, you are up there, you are here, this is going to be your world. Rest assured, we keep it safe. We have a culture of safety and a team that really supports you, but this is the work. And they significantly reduced their turnover because of an entire brand campaign, and their video went viral.
Wow.
Because you had, all these, so I mean, it was a beautiful video, and it really is captivating because it is scary stuff. You're kind of kind of the industrial climbers here. But there's examples of all of that in every job, right?
Yeah.
And so the more that we can be upfront of that and actually really ask ourselves the question and be brave enough as companies to ask ourselves the question sometimes of why do people quit? I think we need to start encouraging to lean into that a bit more. And it's a very frightful thing because sometimes what comes up isn't just a rain, sleet, shine, or snow thing. It's we've kind of got a sucky culture. We really need to think through some change management here. And we've actually had a few times where productions have halted because as a result of planning video, things came out about that culture that leaders realized like, oh, we can't put lipstick on a pig here.
Wow.
Like either we got to be real or not. And so they halted production so that they could shift and I think have some really kind of deep questions and reflections about their culture before they can get started. And I would say that's one of the biggest differences between general marketing and when we're creating video for candidate experiences is that we cannot put lipstick on a pig. This has to be, a balance both of what the opportunity is and also what the challenges are going to be, because candidates are going to smell a stock video, a stock photo, a stock feeling and, emotion from a mile away.
Yeah.
And so we really have to be thoughtful about that and realize that candidates are okay with that. They recognize that our jobs aren't perfect. And if you could be the first one to tell that to them and they don't have to find that out on the first day of the job or the first 90 days on the job, even better, they will respect you more for it.
Yeah. That's a tough one with the culture. It's every company, no company is perfect, but every company does want to put on their absolute best face. And whether it's at the culture level or the job level, but it's good, even if people go through and start dipping their toes into this video experiment and in using this, maybe that is a nice exercise for the overall culture strategy and employer brand strategy, employer brand.
And it's something that we do a lot actually, and again, because my colleague and I, we're former design researchers. So, a lot of where we find where this can be most helpful is sometimes video is just research collection. It's kind of how we started.
Really?
And so much of what you can find is that there's really interesting nuggets of learning generally about the culture where, you can start to really parse out the themes of, well, what really is our EVP? Well, talk to as many employees as you can to help kind of understand that and find that out. Oh, and by the way, you can use video as a way to potentially do that. It just doesn't have to be survey or focus groups, especially if we're trying to, think about how we might do this at scale.
Wow. That's really interesting. And I think a good segue maybe into talking about, you work with some big clients, also some smaller niche clients. But when I personally think of a lot of these brand videos that I've seen, the ones that tend to come to mind are these really massive companies where maybe their reach is larger. So I happen to come across them on YouTube or even commercials. But kind of diving into what does this look like for a company that might be smaller or just new to video in general, and how do they dip their feet into that? Because it sounds like there is many steps to this process. It's not as easy as a talking head telling you a bit about your company and just putting it out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a myriad of ways by which to start and by which to approach this. But really the first one, before we even think about what the approach is making sure is our marketing on board? Is our legal on board? And do we feel confident enough that we have a culture and we have the set of stories where we would feel good about being as honest as we can about this? And if you can't answer those three questions in a positive way, you may need to halt and stop, because candidates are going to find out very quickly. So that's kind of number one. I think the second one would be, then it is thinking about the approach. And there's a myriad of ways by which to do this. And it's something that at Skillscout, films we have done. So Most folks understand video kind of from the more traditional sense, which is like they're looking at Hollywood like, oh my God, I have to be like a Martin Scorsese filmmaker. I have to have like a Hollywood budget. There's going to be like 20 people in my facility. I'm going to have to shut down for 3 days. We're going to lose productivity, like hair and makeup. Like it becomes this huge megilla, and people just get kind of really like, you know, nervous about it and seeing it as being such an expensive investment. And then, oh, heaven forbid, then we interview this person and then they leave. Like there's a lot of that. And yes, there's still kind of Hollywood style productions that are out there. But actually, you know, I think, in my opinion, the right way to do, you know, video, especially when we're thinking about the candidate experience, is that we don't have to necessarily get that extra, you know, about it from that sense. Because the truth is, we're not here to stop productivity. We're here to capture it, right? We want to see a live, in motion, you know, office or people working and like doing real things. And for those that are saying, well, we work in proprietary processes, well, you can certainly mock it, because inevitably candidates really care about the actions. They want to start to see the work. They, you know, at some point it isn't necessarily about the actual content of the work, because they also recognize that there are just some things at that point cannot be shared. You know, so I think, yes, there's full scale productions, and there's reasons why some of that exists. And if I had to think about that, some of it is that companies will invest in more kind of a full scale production kind of video, where you are bringing, you know, a Skillscout films on site with a few of our crew members, because this might be maybe foundational videos that you're looking to set. You know, I always like to ask, when people ask me, okay, like if I were to invest, you know, in these kinds of videos, what might they be? Some of them might be, look, are there stories that aren't going to change, right? The founding story, not going to change so much. Your values, probably not going to change so much. Certainly if you're looking to invest in job videos in a more full scale way, there's probably kind of 4 reasons why you would want to potentially invest generally in video. One is, these are evergreen roles. So it's like, look, I'm hiring nurses night and day, all day long. That is not going to change from year to year. It's worth investing. The second is, you know, what's a role that could use the biggest reality check? And we all know who they are, where it's like, no matter, I mean, these are the American Airlines and the tower climber roles, right? Where it's like, this is really difficult to share kind of on text what this is. We have to show it. The third is, what's the hardest to fill? And that could actually be, you know, in all kind of 3 or 4 of these categories. But what also says is, look, the hardest to fill may not be the one of you're hiring the most, but look, we're hiring a COO, and that role matters so much to the culture of this company that it's worth us doing a video specifically on that, because we need to find the right executive. We need to find the right person. And then the fourth one typically is just what's the hardest to understand? Like there's just some roles where it just becomes so challenging on text. Or through conversation to really understand what this is about. And so those typically might be some of the key themes that you're looking into. That all being said, rest assured, it doesn't have to all be full scale production, because we've got these. And if you can take videos of your dog, cats, and kids, you can also take videos of your workplace and of yourselves. And, you know, with some guidance and structure and some supports, this doesn't have to look like the Blair Witch Project. You can actually do this in a way that, you know, still is quality, still is authentic, but also reaches kind of a level of consistency that marketing and others would be okay with sharing publicly. And that typically becomes one of the biggest hangups for companies, is, you know, not feeling like they have kind of a process of consistency in the templates and the supports, where you can get 100 of the employees to kind of, you know, capture in a very similar manner. And that's a lot of kind of how we come into companies and really support that level of scaling, so that we can get as many employees as possible sharing their stories in a way that is consistent and is quality, and that inevitably they feel good about, which is the most important.
Yeah. Do you find that recently with a lot of remote work, can this kind of thing happen remotely, like these kinds of interviews, or what does it look like? Yeah,
it happens all the time. And again, it really just depends on the level of production value and quality that you're looking for. I mean, we have companies who are very comfortable with kind of just the more kind of selfie style type video. Maybe it is a little shaky, you know, maybe the sound quality isn't like the most amazing, but They just kind of want it in quick succession. And there is still some guidance around, providing them with some structure to say, okay, shoot in a well-lit area, shoot in a quiet place. Like literally, I think some of the biggest hangups we have is that we don't have enough templates and we don't have enough processes around this quite yet. For companies to feel like they can do this, which is often why we're coming in to support, not just from an implementation standpoint, but I think from a consulting standpoint to say like, our biggest strength is helping companies scale video regardless of how it's done. So it really depends, I think, just on what the level of kind of quality and support you're looking for. So it could literally just be from selfie style. People have done it straight on Zoom. We've done virtual producers where literally just like this, I might be asking you the questions so that you're feeling a little bit more comfortable. Maybe I'm telling you, okay, Carolyn, if you can move your computer a little bit to, the left or to the right so that we have this nice framing of you. Maybe I might say, hey, is there another background you might want to select so that maybe we have a better depth of field? Like really there's a level of flexibility that needs to be had to kind of support the kinds of content that companies needs. And we often work with companies who want both. Companies who want both kind of some foundational full scale production videos with a mix of these more updatable in the moment, month by month, project by project kind of videos. So there's no wrong or immediate right way to do video. And I think that's the thing that people have to get over.
Yeah. I've kind of seen that ourselves too, even the way we're trying to make video at Workable. We are all home and it's not always super polished, but when you have a really good team behind you, there's a lot that you can do. And video is super powerful. Kind of going back to the way that organizations can use this across the attract, engage, and retain. What would you say are usually the stories that kind of come up? I know you talked about like the origin story. Are there like certain questions you ask employees? Like, how do you find like that meaty story that is something?
I mean, so part of it is, especially if it makes sense, because maybe this is a more entry level, you are going to want to help them understand what the day-to-day is. But then some of the meaty questions or some of the ones that I really love are things like, I love the surprises, because that's really why you want to end up doing a video. So things like, all right, Carolyn, think back to the first day when you started at Workable. What is something that surprised you about your role that you wish you knew then, or that you wish you knew before you started? And could be positive or could be negative, right? Those are typically why we want to do videos, right? So kind of getting to the surprises is always really meaty. Always love the what makes your heart sing. That's a great question. Also, another way to ask that is like, what is it about your work that you're most proud of sometimes? And another one could be, which is in part a surprise, but you ask it, when you ask it differently, you often get a different answer. Things like, what is it about your work that people would be surprised to know about? And that's where it really gets fascinating from a layperson's point of view to say, wow, I didn't realize that this much, effort, et cetera, goes into creating this one, piece of cereal, right? I mean, there's just all kinds of trivia that is actually quite fascinating behind the scenes that most folks don't know about that would be kind of really fascinating. Another great question is always like, just what makes you stay? What makes you come back every day? You could be working anywhere else, but you continue to kind of work here. And so those are always, I think, really key and meaty questions that I think help us really get to some of the zeitgeist of how people reflect on the work that they do.
So cool. Yeah, those are definitely not like the normal questions of like, how would you describe your role? And what does your day-to-day look like? It's finding that, what's hidden underneath. And that is the stuff that matters and the stuff that keeps us watching and keeps us engaged. Really cool.
Yeah, it's the emotional stories or the surprises, right? We all love surprises, good or bad. And that's oftentimes why we're doing video, is we're trying to demystify things that have become difficult to share in the most traditional of ways. So that is one of the biggest things I would really recommend to people, is think about the surprises, the good and the bad.
Really cool. And do you find the clients you work with, I'm sure they're tracking the performance of these videos in one way or another. Like, what are some measurements that they use to track the effectiveness?
Yeah. Some of it are easy as questions when folks do surveys of, what prompted you to apply for this job? Right. And when you have video, so there's ways I think that, folks are starting to survey to kind of understand how people come into their pipeline and what was it about that prompted them to apply. And when we've gotten that, there certainly have been some very positive responses. Video is already known to attract higher quality performers. Because if you think about, Carolyn, if there was a video of, a marketing manager at, this company versus another, most folks would tend to apply for the ones where they can see the most kind of realness of that role, especially the higher quality performers. And so also thinking about the level of quality of the candidates has been a big one. And also the time to hire. Video is never around replacing the entire hiring process, ever. But it is around shortening the time and the amount of candidates. Because again, if we're giving them a good video, it's because this video is helping a candidate self-screen in or self-screen out. And so rather than the 500 candidates that, you got a lot of them who may not be a good fit or on the cusp, you're getting candidates who are saying, I've watched this video, I see the challenge, and I'm still willing to apply. The other thing that we also see, especially when we talk to hiring managers, is the level of equality of the conversation. They're already coming in to say, hey, I saw this video, this compares or contrasts to the experience that I had before. And especially for visual learners, it's really helping us to ground some of our own experiences so that we can come to the table and come to that conversation with something a lot more deeper when it comes to kind of a more quality interview. So that's a big thing. And inevitably, it's also looking at retention. Are we hiring folks who upon coming in are staying for 90 days or longer? And most typically they are, especially one, that they've been upfront about the culture that they have, they've been upfront about the role. That becomes a big metric that we see as well.
Yeah, so cool. It's fascinating to me how this conversation of video extends so beyond what I was picturing on like the front end, the careers page, and the ways that you can measure it across the entire candidate experience, but also, like you said earlier, when you start creating these videos, it becomes glaringly evident as to how your culture is. And there's only one face you can put out there when you're putting out the true faces of your company and the true experiences that your employees have. So, that alone, it just makes me think that this is an exercise that every recruiting team should start dipping their toes into, because it may be a longer process than you might even think. But yeah, it's just fascinating that, in today's day and age, the way that we communicate our culture, our brand, the way that we get people interested in our role and the right people interested in our company is through video. Going back to, I don't know if we said this in the conversation before we were really recording, but just the metrics behind how engaging video is. And video is the content that is getting eyes on it and is actually getting engagement. And it's so much easier to consume that information than to read a blog post or read a job description. But it's nothing if you really don't have the right things to back it up. And today, our team at Workable, we create a lot of content around culture and diversity inclusion and how to approach that in an honest, sustainable way. And I just see that tying like super deeply into, actually bringing your culture into video and coming to terms with it. So yeah, that's really cool that you've been able to be on this side with clients who are going through that process.
Yeah, no, it's been a wild ride, and we've helped tell any and all kinds of stories from, be it to diversity inclusion to job videos to what to expect in the hiring process to like, here's even where your interview is going to be because our parking lot is so complicated, right? Like there's really such a myriad of ways by which this can get consumed and by the kind of the content. Where this, so for example, right, like we've done a lot of meet your recruiter videos or behind the scenes of a recruitment event, whether that's digital or not. All of those things can start to get demystified through a medium like video.
Yeah. So cool. Well, thank you so much again for sharing today. If you could just remind us a bit about Skillscout and how we could get in touch with you if we are needing a bit of support when we start dipping our toes into this.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to skillscout.com or quite frankly, be my LinkedIn friend. That's, LinkedIn is really my primary platform. That's where I share a lot of, the tips, tricks, everything else in between, case studies, all kinds of things are on video. So that's really, the sandbox that I play in. And at the very least, however, I can be kind of helpful to you as you think about how video, might work at your company. I'm always down to be supportive and have a ton of resources that I can share regardless if we work formally together or not.
Awesome. Elena Valentine, everyone. Thank you so much again for your time.
Thank
and
you.
for being my first LinkedIn Live.
Yeah, first LinkedIn Live guinea pig.
No one I would rather have here today. And
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for diving into video with us. There's so much to talk about in here. So again, anyone who does have questions after watching this, feel free to get in touch with Elena. Find us on Workable's LinkedIn or our resources site. We like to create blog posts and other ways to consume this really great information. So I'm sure you can find some stuff on there in a few weeks after this episode. But yeah, again, keep the questions coming. There is a lot to unpack here. But yeah, thank you so much again.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.